The day began with the soft golden light of morning spilling over the billionaire's enormous estate. The mansion, which was already a symbol of wealth and elegance, seemed even more magnificent as the sun highlighted its tall white pillars and sprawling gardens. Inside, the staff were already moving quickly, carrying flowers, arranging chairs, and making sure every detail of the wedding was perfect. The billionaire himself was in his private study, reviewing the final schedule for the day. Checking that every arrangement was flawless. He was a man used to controlling every aspect of his life, and this day was no exception. Outside, the wedding planners were busy coordinating deliveries of flowers, exotic fruits, and delicacies from around the world. Every table had to be perfect, every chair aligned, every decoration in its exact position. The bride's dresses were being prepared in a separate room, each gown sparkling with delicate embroidery and shimmering beads. There was a sense of excitement, but also pressure. Because with wealth came expectations, and nothing less than perfection would be accepted. Guests started arriving one by one, stepping out of sleek black limousines onto the grand marble driveway. They were greeted by a symphony of soft music, the sound of fountains splashing, and the fragrance of fresh flowers. Some whispered to each other about the beauty of the place, while others tried discreetly to capture photos without drawing attention. Meanwhile, the bride was being attended to by her team of stylists and makeup artists. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from the nervous excitement of marrying a man she loved. She had imagined this day countless times, but seeing it all come together made it even more real and overwhelming. The staff moved like a well-practiced orchestra, each person knowing exactly what to do. The black maid, who had been with the billionaire for many years, quietly oversaw small details, adjusting table linens, straightening flowers, and ensuring nothing was out of place. She was often unnoticed, but her presence was crucial, as she knew the household inside out, and she carried the secrets of the mansion as silently as she walked. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, the final touches were added. Candles were lit, creating a warm golden glow. The chandeliers sparkled as light reflected off crystal, and every flower seemed fresher than the last. The air smelled of roses and jasmine, a combination that made the environment feel magical. The caterers placed trays of the finest delicacies near the reception area, arranging them with artistic precision. From exotic chocolates to delicate pastries, every item seemed to tell a story of wealth and taste. The billionaire checked in with the wedding planner one last time, making sure that the music, the seating, and even the timing of the photographer's shots were flawless. He adjusted a small detail on the invitation table, as though even the smallest imperfection could ruin the entire experience. He wasn't just preparing for a wedding, he was preparing for a spectacle, an event that everyone would remember long after it was over. Even the sky seemed to cooperate, with a few fluffy clouds drifting lazily against a bright blue canvas. The fountains gurgled in rhythm with the soft music, adding a calming effect amidst all the hustle. The garden, where the wedding ceremony would take place, looked like a dream, with rows of white chairs, sparkling decorations, and flower petals forming a delicate path for the bride to walk on. Despite the grandeur and perfection, there was a sense of tension lingering in the air. Everyone was waiting for the moment when the bride would walk down the aisle and when the billionaire would finally see her. There was excitement, curiosity, and a little anxiety mixed together, making the atmosphere charged, yet calm in appearance. Even the smallest mistake could disrupt the flawless picture of this luxurious day, and everyone involved was acutely aware of that. The black maid quietly made her rounds one last time, ensuring everything was in place, adjusting a flower here, moving a glass there, and making mental notes of anything unusual. She had always been observant, and today was no different. Her eyes noticed things others might miss, and she carried a sense of responsibility beyond her duties. As the hours passed and the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the mansion transformed into a place of breathtaking beauty, ready to host the wedding of the year. And yet, behind all the glitter, all the arrangements, and all the smiles, an undercurrent of suspense lingered. No one could have imagined that the seemingly perfect preparations were about to be interrupted by a single note, a moment that would freeze hearts and change the course of the day forever. The grandeur, the luxury, and the anticipation had set the stage, and the story was ready to take an unexpected turn. The excitement in the mansion was almost tangible, the air buzzing with whispers, laughter, and the soft notes of a piano playing somewhere in the distance. The guests were beginning to notice small details that made the event feel even more extraordinary. golden ribbons twisted around the stair railings, crystal vases reflected the light like miniature rainbows, and the scent of fresh flowers filled every corner. Everyone seemed to be caught between admiration and anticipation, their eyes constantly darting to see what would happen next. The bride, still in her preparation room, could hear the faint hum of voices and footsteps outside. She tried to calm her nerves, but her heart raced like a drum. She glanced at herself in the mirror, her gown sparkling under the chandelier, and wondered how this day could feel both perfect and terrifying at the same time. Her bridesmaids fussed over her hair and makeup, laughing and trying to distract her, but even their energy could not hide the tension that lingered like an invisible shadow. Outside, the billionaire moved through the crowd with quiet authority, shaking hands and nodding at familiar faces. His expression was calm, but his eyes were alert, scanning everything around him. He had always been meticulous, noticing things others overlooked. From the way a guest stood to the angle of a chair, every detail mattered, because in his world, perfection was expected, and today was no exception. The wedding planners moved like trained performers, coordinating timing, checking flowers, adjusting table settings, and giving subtle instructions to staff. Everyone seemed to understand the importance of the day, but beneath the surface, a sense of nervous excitement ran through the team. The music swelled as more guests arrived, their elegant attire reflecting the soft light of the chandeliers, creating an almost magical atmosphere. The black maid moved silently among the crowd, unnoticed by most, but aware of everything. Her eyes caught small things others missed, a napkin out of place, a bouquet slightly tilted, the shadow of doubt in a guest's smile. She had been part of the household for many years and had witnessed countless events, yet today felt different, almost as if she sensed that something important was about to happen. Her hand instinctively touched the note tucked in her pocket, a small piece of paper that would soon hold the power to change everything. The ceremony area in the garden was breathtaking. A sea of white chairs aligned perfectly on the soft green grass. The aisle was covered with rose petals, and the sunlight filtered through the branches of the old oak trees, casting playful shadows on the ground. Guests began to take their seats, their conversations softening as the anticipation grew. Cameras clicked softly, capturing smiles, glances, and the energy that seemed to thrum through the air. Then came a moment that made time feel slower. The music shifted subtly, signaling that the bride's entrance was approaching. Guests straightened in their chairs, whispers ceased, and even the wind seemed to pause. The bride took a deep breath, and for a second, the mansion felt suspended between past and future, between expectation and reality. Everyone's attention turned to the grand doors, waiting for her to appear, the moment they had all been imagining. But behind the perfect smiles and polished appearances, tension quietly built. A few subtle glances were exchanged, a raised eyebrow, a hand tightening on a chair, as if some invisible current hinted that something unexpected was about to happen. The guests did not know it yet, but this day, designed to be flawless, was about to be interrupted in a way no one could anticipate. A single note, held in the hands of a quiet, observant maid, had the power to stop everything, to freeze hearts, and to change the story forever. As the music swelled, the guests waited with bated breath, unaware that the perfect scene of luxury and celebration was about to give way to shock, confusion, and suspense. The stage was set, the players in position, and the tension, though invisible, hung thick in the air, ready to explode at any moment. The mansion, with all its beauty and grandeur, had become more than a venue. It was now the backdrop for a story that no one could have predicted. Amid the soft chatter of the guests and the gentle rustle of silk gowns, the black maid moved quietly through the crowd, her steps barely making a sound. She had always been a figure in the background, unnoticed by most, yet she saw more than anyone else. Her eyes, sharp and attentive, scanned the scene, noticing everything, from the alignment of the chairs to the subtle nervous glances exchanged between the bride and her closest friends. Today, however, her usual role of silent observer felt heavier, more important, as if fate itself had placed a responsibility in her hands. The note, small and unassuming, rested in the pocket of her uniform, but its contents carried a weight that could not be measured in words alone. It had been written in secrecy, a confession, a warning, something only the billionaire needed to see before the ceremony could continue. She held it carefully, as if it were made of glass, knowing that one wrong move could change everything. She had delivered messages countless times before, but never one like this, never one that could freeze an entire wedding in an instant. As she approached the billionaire, her heart beat faster, though she kept her face calm, her expression neutral. Everyone around was caught in their own excitement, oblivious to the storm quietly approaching. The billionaire, standing near the garden's grand fountain, greeted guests with a polite nod, yet his eyes, trained to notice subtle shifts in behavior, caught the faint tension in her movements. He did not yet know the contents of the note, but instinctively, he sensed its importance. The black maid took a deep breath and stepped closer, her hands slightly trembling as she extended the small piece of paper. For a moment, it seemed as though time slowed, the laughter and music fading into a distant hum. The guests, still unaware, continued to chat and admire the flowers, while she and the billionaire shared a silent understanding, one that required no words. She had always been trusted with details, but this trust now felt immense, almost unbearable. He took the note from her hands, his fingers brushing briefly against hers, sending a quiet shock through both of them. She stepped back slightly, watching intently as his eyes scanned the paper, his face unreadable at first. Then, a subtle tightening of his jaw, a narrowing of his eyes, signaled that whatever he had read had shifted something inside him. The perfect composure that he carried like armor began to show cracks, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to hang on his reaction. The maid, though calm on the outside, felt a surge of anticipation. Her life had been spent in service, watching secrets unfold from the shadows, but this moment was hers to witness in full. She had seen happiness, disappointment, and anger before, but nothing compared to the intensity she now felt. The note had accomplished its purpose, it had reached the right eyes, and the consequences would be immediate. Around them, the air seemed to change, almost imperceptibly at first. Guests shifted in their seats, sensing a subtle pause in the rhythm of the day. The music faltered for a second, the wind paused, and even the fountain seemed to quiet down. It was as if the mansion itself recognized that something monumental had occurred, that a single moment could now unravel the carefully crafted perfection of the wedding. The billionaire folded the note slowly, his gaze lingering on the maid for a second longer than usual, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. He then turned his attention to the wedding ceremony, his posture rigid, his face set. Every guest now instinctively sensed that something was different, though no one could yet imagine the scale of what was about to unfold. The maid stepped aside, blending into the background as she had always done, yet her presence was the catalyst for the storm that was silently gathering. In that instant, the black maid became more than an observer, more than a servant quietly fulfilling her duties. She had delivered a truth that could not be ignored, and the perfect wedding, the grand event that everyone had been anticipating, now teetered on the edge of suspense. The stage was set for shock, revelation, and frozen hearts, and the next moment would leave everyone breathless. The soft hum of the garden suddenly felt heavier, as if the air itself had sensed what was coming. The guests, still unaware of the quiet tension that had just passed between the black maid and the billionaire, continued to chatter and adjust their seats. The music swelled, preparing for the grand entrance of the bride, yet the atmosphere shifted subtly, a sense of unease threading through the crowd. The billionaire held the note in his hand, feeling its weight more in emotion than in paper. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the assembly. Every detail, every expression, everything had been meticulously planned, every moment choreographed for perfection. Yet now, nothing felt ordinary. He moved a single step forward, his posture rigid, his mind focused, aware that the moment he acted would ripple through everyone present. Then, as the music softened and the first few notes of the bride's entrance floated through the air, he raised his hand slightly, signaling the orchestra to pause. The sudden silence was almost deafening, as if the world itself had stopped in anticipation. Guests turned their heads, confusion spreading like wildfire across the rows of white chairs. Whispers erupted softly, questions forming in every mind. Yet no one dared move or speak too loudly, sensing that this was no ordinary interruption. The bride, stepping delicately into the garden, paused mid-step, her heart skipping a beat. Something in the air felt wrong, though she could not name it. Her eyes met the billionaire's from across the distance, and in that instant, a chill ran through her. The confident, smiling man she had imagined waiting for her now wore an expression she did not recognize, a mix of seriousness and unspoken tension that froze her entirely. The black maid, standing silently at the side, observed the scene with calm precision. Her part was done, yet she remained attentive, ready for the consequences. The note had delivered its message, and the billionaire's reaction was about to set the course for everything that followed. He stepped forward, his gaze locked on the bride, his voice low but commanding. "Enough," he said, halting the ceremony in a way that no one could ignore. Gasps rippled through the crowd, and the music stopped completely, leaving a tense silence that made every guest shift uncomfortably. Some murmured, unsure if they had heard correctly, others stared in disbelief, trying to process why the billionaire would interrupt the wedding of the year. The bride's body stiffened, her hands trembling slightly, and a sense of dread began to fill her chest. She could not move, could not speak, frozen by the unexpected turn of events. He unfolded the note carefully, his eyes scanning its contents once more, as if confirming the truth. The guests craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse, but he held it with authority, revealing nothing. His calm yet firm presence demanded attention, every eye in the garden fixed upon him. The energy shifted from excitement to suspense, and the perfect world they had anticipated seemed to tilt on an invisible edge. The bride's expression, once radiant with excitement, now reflected shock and confusion. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came. Her dreams of the perfect ceremony collided with the sudden uncertainty that the billionaire's decision had created. Around her, the guests remained motionless, sensing that the drama unfolding was beyond ordinary understanding. This was not just an interruption. It was a moment that would be remembered for years, a story told and retold. The billionaire's hand remained raised slightly, the note still in his grasp, as he addressed the crowd with quiet authority, assuring them nothing was out of control. Yet his actions had already spoken volumes. The maid's eyes followed every movement, aware that this was the culmination of the small action she had taken. The note had changed everything in a heartbeat, and the bride, frozen in place, felt the full weight of the revelation. For a few tense minutes, the garden existed in suspended reality. Every flower, every chair, every guest caught between anticipation and fear. The wedding, once a symbol of perfection, now became a stage for suspense, mystery, and hidden truths. And at the center of it all stood the billionaire, calm yet commanding, the note clutched in his hand, holding the power to decide the course of the day. The garden, once alive with laughter and music, now felt like a stage frozen in time. Guests whispered nervously to one another, their eyes wide with confusion, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Some tilted their heads, trying to spot the source of the disruption, while others stared blankly, unsure if they were dreaming. The soft hum of the fountains, the gentle rustle of petals, and the distant notes of the paused music created a strange contrast to the tension that had taken over the crowd. The bride remained rooted to the spot, her hands clenching the folds of her gown, her heart racing like a bird trapped in her chest. She had imagined this moment countless times, the walk down the aisle, the exchange of vows, the celebration. But now every dream seemed to hover on the edge of a nightmare. Her eyes were locked on the billionaire, trying to read his expression, to find some hint of what had gone wrong. Yet all she saw was calm authority masking something far more serious. The billionaire held the note firmly, as if it were a sword that could cut through deception and lies. His lips moved slightly as he whispered words to himself, almost inaudible, and then, with a deep breath, he began to address the stunned crowd. His voice was steady, even, but it carried a weight that silenced every guest. He spoke of trust, of loyalty, of hidden truths that had been uncovered. And though he did not reveal the full contents of the note, the implication was enough to send shockwaves through the assembly. Whispers spread like wildfire, questions forming in every mind. Guests exchanged glances filled with curiosity and apprehension. Their carefully planned conversations about flowers, attire, and schedules vanished, replaced by speculation and suspense. The once joyous atmosphere of a perfect wedding had transformed into a tension-filled spectacle. Every eye watched, every ear strained to catch the next word. Yet the billionaire remained composed, a quiet storm at the center of chaos. The bride's hands trembled, her knees weak. As the reality of the situation began to sink in, she felt a sudden weight on her shoulders, a pressure she had never imagined, and the confidence she had carried that morning vanished like smoke. Her smile, once bright and assured, had faded into frozen disbelief. Her dreams, her excitement, and her anticipation all collided in one instant, leaving her unable to move or speak, frozen as if time itself had paused around her. The black maid stood quietly to the side, observing everything with calm precision, Her role had shifted from silent observer to silent witness of the drama she had inadvertently set in motion. She felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety, knowing that the note had reached the right hands but unsure how the situation would unfold. The energy of the mansion seemed to concentrate on her and the billionaire, as if the world had narrowed down to a single thread of truth. Guests tried to maintain their composure, but the shock was palpable. Their conversations had died down completely, replaced by hushed murmurs and nervous glances. Even the children, previously excited by the decorations and music, sensed the tension, their wide eyes following the frozen bride and the commanding figure of the billionaire. Some guests instinctively reached for phones, eager to capture a moment that seemed too incredible to be real, yet they hesitated, unsure of the propriety of recording such a private upheaval. The flowers, the decorations, and the sunlight streaming through the trees all seemed distant, mere scenery to the unfolding drama. Even the soft petals scattered along the aisle could not hide the sharp tension that now dominated the space. The billionaire's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaotic storm of emotions rippling through the bride and the guests. The power of a single note, delivered quietly by a quiet maid, had transformed the entire day from celebration to suspense, leaving everyone on edge. For a few long moments, the garden was suspended in this strange reality, guests frozen in place, the bride immobilized by shock, and the billionaire standing as the fulcrum of control and revelation. The black maid watched silently, knowing that the story of this wedding had shifted forever. One simple piece of paper had created a ripple that would be remembered for years, and no one in that garden would ever see this wedding the same way again. The garden, which had moments ago been a scene of silent confusion, now held a different energy, heavier, charged with anticipation. Guests leaned forward in their seats, whispers reduced to quiet gasps, as everyone instinctively understood that the note contained a secret capable of changing everything. The bride, still frozen in her spot, could barely breathe. Her mind raced through possibilities, each one darker than the last, as she stared at the billionaire, trying to read his expression. The billionaire unfolded the note slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the gravity of the moment. His eyes scanned the words, his fingers gripping the paper firmly. The crowd noticed the subtle shift in his posture. The calm authority was now tinged with determination, a quiet intensity that demanded attention. Not a single guest dared move, speak, or even blink, as if disturbing the fragile tension would cause the entire scene to collapse. The black maid remained at the side, her gaze steady, almost proud, knowing she had delivered the message that needed to reach him. She had always been silent, unseen, yet her quiet courage had just become the catalyst for one of the most dramatic moments in the billionaire's life. Every heartbeat in the garden seemed to echo in unison with the unfolding revelation. Then, in a voice both calm and commanding, the billionaire began to speak, revealing the content of the note without fully reading it aloud. His words pierced the quiet, carrying the weight of truth. He spoke of betrayal, of hidden plans, of promises that had been broken long before this day. Each phrase caused subtle ripples through the crowd, as gasps, murmurs, and stifled cries spread from one guest to another. The bride's face went pale, her frozen state deepening into disbelief. Her mind tried to process the reality before her, a shocking truth she had never anticipated. She had imagined obstacles, nerves, even minor mishaps, but never the kind of revelation that could unravel her entire wedding in an instant. The luxurious gowns, the flowers, the smiling guests, all of it seemed surreal now, a backdrop to a story she had never expected to be part of. Guests craned their necks, straining to hear, trying to piece together the fragments of information. Some whispered speculations, imagining what betrayal could be so grave as to halt a wedding mid-ceremony. Others simply stared, paralyzed by the drama unfolding before them. The once joyous celebration had transformed into a stage of suspense and moral reckoning, with every person present forced to confront their assumptions about love, trust, and honesty. The billionaire's eyes met the bride's, steady and unwavering, as he conveyed that the note revealed a truth she could no longer ignore. It was a revelation about intentions hidden behind smiles, secrets kept in shadowed corners, and choices made without transparency. The bride's hands trembled, and she clutched the fabric of her gown, realizing that the foundation of the day, and perhaps of her relationship, had shifted irrevocably. The black maid, though unseen by most, felt the weight of her small action ripple outward. Her quiet role had turned into a pivotal moment of reckoning, and the consequences would be felt far beyond this single note. She understood that truth, though often delayed, always demanded acknowledgement, and today, it had arrived in full force. For a moment, silence returned, heavy and thick, as the billionaire let the impact settle. The crowd absorbed the revelation, their minds racing with questions, doubts, and astonishment. The bride finally exhaled, though it was shaky, a mixture of fear, realization, and a bitter taste of betrayal flooding her senses. She could no longer step forward as if nothing had happened. The note had changed the story, and the path ahead was uncertain. The note, though small and unassuming, had done what no words, no speeches, and no lavish arrangements could do. It had exposed the truth, frozen the bride, and commanded attention from everyone present. The mansion, the garden, and every guest had become witnesses to a revelation that would redefine the meaning of this wedding forever. The scene was set for decisions that could not be undone, and the consequences of one hidden truth now hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The bride stood frozen, her mind a whirlwind of shock, disbelief, and sudden clarity. She had imagined this day as the pinnacle of happiness, yet in the span of a few minutes, everything she believed in seemed to crumble. The note, the revelation, and the billionaire's steady gaze had shifted the entire world beneath her feet. She could barely comprehend what had been uncovered, her heart pounding, her hands trembling. Around her, the guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing that this was no ordinary interruption. The whispers had quieted, replaced by wide-eyed silence, as everyone waited for the bride to respond. Some leaned forward, curiosity written on their faces, while others exchanged nervous glances, unsure if it was appropriate to intervene. The tension in the garden was palpable, as if every heartbeat echoed in unison, amplifying the drama of the moment. The billionaire, standing tall and composed, waited patiently, his eyes never leaving the bride. His calm authority contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions raging in her chest. He had the power to dictate the next steps, to choose whether the day would continue as planned or dissolve into chaos. His fingers held the note firmly, a tangible reminder of the truth that had been hidden too long. The bride finally exhaled, a long, shaky breath that seemed to carry the weight of all her fears. She stepped forward slowly, each movement deliberate, as if testing the stability of the ground beneath her. Her eyes, wide and glistening, met his, searching for understanding, forgiveness, or perhaps an explanation she had yet to grasp. The guests held their collective breath, sensing that this was the critical moment, the point at which the future of the wedding, and perhaps the marriage, would be decided. I didn't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling as it reached him. I would never have. She stopped, realizing that words could not undo what had been revealed. The truth had a weight all its own, heavier than any promise or declaration, and now it demanded acknowledgement rather than excuses. The billionaire's gaze softened slightly, though his expression remained firm. It's not about what you knew or didn't know, he said slowly, each word measured. It's about honesty, about choices, about whether we can move forward with a foundation built on trust rather than deception. The bride's lips parted, unable to respond immediately. As the enormity of his words sank in, their eyes locked, a silent conversation passing between them, filled with emotion, understanding, and the realization that the moment required a decision. Guests watched in stunned silence, knowing that whatever happened next would define the rest of the day. Some felt sympathy for the bride, while others admired the billionaire's composure. The black maid, standing quietly at the side, observed with calm satisfaction, knowing her small action had brought hidden truths to light, and that the day's drama was now unfolding exactly as it should. Finally, the billionaire made his decision, a subtle nod, a deep breath, a shift in posture that carried authority and finality. We cannot continue as if nothing has happened, he said, his voice carrying through the hushed garden. This wedding cannot move forward until clarity is restored, and truth is acknowledged fully. The bride's eyes filled with tears, a mix of relief, fear, and respect, as she realized that this pause was not a rejection of her entirely, but a call for honesty, for transparency, for a chance to rebuild trust before taking the next step. The guests began to murmur softly, some in understanding, others in shock, as the atmosphere transformed from frozen tension to a suspenseful anticipation of what would come next. The bride, still trembling, nodded slowly, acknowledging the gravity of the moment, and the billionaire, holding the note firmly, watched as the first step toward resolution began. The black maid's quiet presence reminded everyone that sometimes the smallest actions, delivered with courage, could change the course of even the grandest events. In that garden, under the golden sunlight and amidst the fragrance of flowers, the wedding became more than a celebration of love. It had transformed into a story of trust, truth, and the power of choices. A single note had stopped the world for a moment, forced reflection, and demanded decisions that would forever alter the lives of those involved. The bride and billionaire, caught in a delicate balance between forgiveness and revelation, were now poised to shape the next chapter of their story. The garden, once a place of celebration and joy, now felt like a theater of emotions. Every guest remained seated, their eyes fixed on the billionaire and the bride, waiting to see how the story would end. The soft breeze carried the scent of roses and jasmine, but the fragrance was overshadowed by tension, curiosity, and anticipation. The moment that had frozen hearts now demanded closure, and everyone felt it. The bride, still trembling slightly, took a deep breath and faced the billionaire fully, her eyes reflecting a mixture of fear, realization, and newfound resolve. She understood that the day could no longer be about appearances, grand gowns, or applause. It had become about truth, honesty, and the choices that define a life shared with another. She stepped forward slowly, every movement deliberate, and whispered, "I understand, and I am ready to face what comes next." The billionaire studied her carefully, his expression a mixture of authority and contemplation. He had the power to either move forward with the wedding or walk away entirely, but he knew that real decisions required both courage and clarity. His hand held the note, the small piece of paper that had altered the course of the entire day, a reminder that even in wealth and luxury, truth could not be ignored. After a long, silent moment, he lowered the note and spoke with calm finality. "We will not pretend that nothing has happened, but we will also not let the past dictate every choice we make. Today is not just about a wedding. It is about acknowledging truth, learning from it, and deciding whether we are willing to continue with honesty at the center of everything." His voice carried through the garden, steady and commanding, yet gentle enough to reach the bride's heart. The bride nodded, tears forming in her eyes, but her posture straightened, showing strength and acceptance. She realized that the pause, the shock, and the revelation had given her something far more valuable than perfection, an opportunity to start honestly, to face life together with eyes open. The guests, sensing the resolution, slowly relaxed, whispers spreading softly, the tension beginning to lift. The drama had reached its peak, and now a sense of cautious hope replaced fear. The black maid, standing quietly at the edge of the garden, allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Her role as the silent observer had ended, but her courage in delivering the note had forever shaped the course of the day. She had reminded everyone present that even those who seem invisible can carry the power to change destinies. The mansion, with its sprawling gardens and luxurious interiors, had become a witness not just to wealth and celebration, but to truth and human emotion. The music slowly resumed, softer this time, reflecting a tentative calm rather than grand ceremony. Guests adjusted in their seats, the chatter returning gradually, as if the garden itself exhaled after holding its collective breath. The bride and billionaire moved toward each other, not with the hurried enthusiasm of a picture-perfect moment, but with measured steps. Understanding that every movement now carried meaning and intention, their eyes met, conveying unspoken promises, a bond strengthened by honesty, rather than illusion. The ceremony, though altered, continued in a new, meaningful way. Each vow spoken carried weight, each smile reflected understanding. Every element of the wedding, the flowers, the guests, the sunlight filtering through the trees, was now part of a story that blended beauty with reality, grandeur with truth. The guests would remember this day not just for the lavish display, but for the extraordinary drama that had unfolded, the suspense, and the eventual resolution that spoke of courage, accountability, and human emotion. And as the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the mansion and gardens, the bride and billionaire stood together, stronger, wiser, and connected by the trials of the day. The black maid quietly returned to her duties, her presence no longer noticed, yet her role immortalized in the memory of everyone who had witnessed the day's events. The story that began with luxury and perfection had ended with truth, reflection, and a deeper understanding of love and choice. And in that realization, the wedding, though unconventional, had achieved something far greater than anyone could have imagined.